Boy, oh boy, it is deep in the afternoon at this point. I've been trying to put this podcast together for the last 6 hours. I said, I'll get up this morning and I'll knock it out. And I did not do that. I've been very tired today. It's been not a lazy day, but I wanted it to be a lazy day. I have really I'm so tired right now. I actually just ate a pretty big meal and a bag of chips, which, if you guys know me and my diet, not a lot of chips in my diet at the moment. Actually, none at all for the most part. But went to Whole Foods and I said, I'm going to cheat. It wasn't even a cheat. It was like a Boulder Canyon avocado oil. It was cheddar cheese. I don't know. I looked at the ingredients. They seemed okay. But welcome to another edition of the Weekly Daily Podcast, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm wearing a jacket right now. A little fleece, I believe the specific name is, and it's a little hot, but not as hot as it has been. I actually got the heat problem resolved, which, if you guys have followed the podcast, the apartment it's been about 80 degrees for the past week, or not for the past week, since I moved in, for the past like 3 weeks, and they finally came in, and they're like, oh yeah, because if you haven't listened, basically I had the heat turned off, but it cut on, and it was like 80 degrees. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. This is very obnoxious. So maintenance guy came in and he's like, oh yeah, he said something about a valve being open or closed or whatever. It wasn't supposed to be like that. And he fixed it. And I was like, wow, thank you so much, sir. Also, is my bill going to be $1,000 for the heat being on nonstop? Because it was like 80 degrees it was like 77, 78 with all of my windows open. And I mean, it's been cooler. It's actually pretty cold. It was hitting like the 40s, maybe 30s at night. And to wake up with the heat at like 78, I'm like, oh wow. That heat has been on, huh? If it's 30 degrees outside and it's 78 degrees in my house, that's an energy bill that I'm not going to like. So, we'll have to see what happens there. But happy daylight saving time end, everybody. You guys into that holiday? There's a lot of holidays out there, and that's one that doesn't get as much love. And I'll be honest, shouldn't get love. I'm not a big fan. I don't like it when the sun goes down earlier. I will say I do like the fact that the sun's going to come up earlier. That'll be nice. I can maybe do something for a second before work with sunlight being outside. That's nice. But also, it's a countdown from now until December 21st, where you're just getting less and less light every day. So that's kind of a depressing part about that. But what can you do? The Earth is spinning around the sun. And I don't know if we're getting further or if we're getting closer. I know there's something to do with an axis where the Earth tilts sometimes different directions. And I didn't listen too much in science class, but I think that's what's going on right now. We're going through a little bit of an axis crisis, and our angle's a little off, and I don't like the angle that we're at. But give it 6 months, and I'll be a big fan of the angle because it'll be sunny and warm, and that's my favorite. But like I said, I just ate a bunch of stuff. I'm going to try not to go into a carb coma. I'm tired. I'm tired from eating a bunch just now. I'm also tired because I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. If I'm going to be honest with you guys, last night stayed up later than I have maybe in my entire 30s, maybe in the last 6 years. Probably not, but maybe. And I stayed up until 3 o'clock, but the clocks went back. So it was only 2 o'clock, but it was technically 3 o'clock. And you're probably thinking, what were you doing, Ben? Were you reading a book? Were you, doing something productive? And the answer is yes. I was not reading a book, but I was productively playing Fortnite. The new season came out, updated map. Actually, it's an old map, but they brought back, it's called Fortnite Remix, okay? And is it good? Not really, but I played it a lot anyways. I'm not a huge fan of the old maps, but they're doing like they're going through the old seasons week by week until a new chapter or season. I don't know how they operate exactly, but it was fun. I was playing with a couple buddies. We were yucking it up. They were. It's funny. They're also two comics, and they were bantering back and forth, just Riff City the whole time. And it was late. I mean, I didn't hop on until like midnight, and my brain was like mush. And it's kind of funny being part of a conversation where people are bantering and the chemistry is just like they're just flowing. And I had like nothing of substance, like nothing good to add. They'd be like in this good synced up rhythm, and then if I tried to insert something in, I just derail the fun that they were having. That's what it felt like. It was fun. It wasn't a huge deal, but I wasn't bringing much to the table, is what I'm saying. And you know what? Sometimes I bring stuff to the table, but if it's after midnight, you can pretty much guarantee that whatever's coming out of my mouth is. You'll be lucky if you understand what it is. I'll be lucky if I understand what it is. It's after midnight's not a great time for me, but it was a good time. Stayed up a little later than I should have, but what can you do? I'm just living my life out here. It is getting very hot. I'm gonna take this jacket off. I was like, you know what, guys, it's a little cooler in here. I'm gonna show them that I'm a full adult, and I had a maintenance man come in and repair the issues in my apartment, and it just, it's hot, actually. Maybe the heat's broken again. Maybe it's these lights that I have directly on my face. Could that be it? Might be. But, yeah. What else is going on? I got a haircut this week. I don't know if you guys can tell. Got a nice little haircut, which I've said it before. I just bought some clippers like a couple months ago and was planning on just cutting my own hair for the next however many years I live, just saving money, just a simple man. But actually had a fellow comic who cuts hair. She was like, she's mostly cut just women's hair in the past, and she's trying to get trained on like cutting men's hair. So she asked me if I could come in and just get like a free haircut, so she could practice. And it's funny, I didn't like fully realize until I got there that I was like, who else did you ask? You got other people coming in here, other comics that are gonna come in and let you train on their head? And she was like, I think she said no. And basically, long story short, she was like, I asked you because I heard that you cut your own hair. So if I mess it up, like it can't be worse than you cutting your own hair. And I was like, you know what? That hurts that's the truth of the matter. Not that she said it, but just looking inward at myself and being like, I should probably be more of an adult. But also, she's not wrong. It didn't hurt my feelings. I was like, that makes total sense. But what did hurt, it didn't hurt my feelings. But what was funny when I got there, first off, let me back up here a little bit. I feel like I'm rambling at a speed that's, I'm just going on too many tangents here. But I go to the place, the hair salon. It's off of Broadway, and I walk in, and it's a huge, like, very nice salon. It's like a huge area, and the setup is very like vintage, in the sense that it's just the vibe. It's like vintage but very nice. And when you walk into a place, this is what happened. I walked in, and it's like pretty fancy, much fancier than the Great Clips that I'm used to when I would go get a haircut at an establishment other than my own bathroom. But I walked in, and I had the feeling where I was just like, I don't belong here. You ever do that? You ever walk into a place and you go, I don't belong here, and they know that I don't belong here. They probably looked at my self haircut and go, boy, this guy. I mean, I don't know what the haircut costs are there, because like I said, obviously they were cutting my hair for free as like practice or whatever. But I'm imagining a price tag of a couple $100s per cut, and that's just not money I'm willing to spend on my look ever. But it was a cool experience. I went there, and it basically we were just chatting back and forth, and the the lady cutting my hair, she goes, "What do you wash your hair with usually?" I think she saw it was kind of dry or whatever, and she's like, "What do you wash your hair with usually?" And I said, with soap," and she was like, "What? With soap?" And I was like, "Yeah. Long story short, I'm a child, and I just like washing my entire body, including my hair, with a bar of soap. That's look. Now that I say it out loud publicly, that I feel a little shame, but it's been working for me for the past 6 years or so, and then that was fine. I mean, it was fine. I don't care. I get that I'm a moron in most avenues of my life, so I was, you know, not expecting a round of applause for my bar of soap routine. But what was funny was people kept coming over throughout the haircut, like employees there that were helping her out, just taking a look and being like, "Yeah, that looks good," or "Do this," or "Do that." So multiple people came through, and she kept being like, "He washes his hair with soap," and I was like, "All right, you don't have to tell everybody that. That's that was kind of a between you and me piece of information." But that was fine. They were giving me a hard time for it, but it was good. Felt good. I mean, my hair was already short, but they did like a fade, which is good when you just have like a one size all around your hair, or like the top is the same length as your sides. That's not a good look. You shouldn't be doing that. So feel a lot better with the cut now. Let it grow out a little bit. Still pretty short, but yeah, that was nice. Got a good haircut. We got, like I said, some colder weather coming in, which, I always talk about how I hate the cold weather. It's whatever. What can you do? I have my hands down here on my leg. I don't know if I need to get animated, or I'm also not trying to bang the table because I feel like moving my hands on the table bounces the microphone around. So we'll see. I'll try not to bang stuff around here too much. But yeah, it's getting cooler. It's been like very warm. I think last weekend was like in the 70s, and today was like 55 was the high. And so it's getting down to the 30s. And next week, I think it's going to be basically 30s and 40s, maybe is like the highs for the week. So it's definitely getting cooler. Monday, they're calling for snow, which don't like that. Not a fan of that. But we'll see. I don't know. I never know how much snow it's going to be when they call for snow. It's always like you just see the little snowflake on the weather app, and you're like, all right. We'll see how much that is. If there's any snow or if there's 4 feet of snow, who knows? It's Denver. You never really know. Um, but we'll see. I don't know. I think some people were mentioning something about like maybe there being a lot, but I don't know. It's weird coming from the East Coast in Virginia. I mean, obviously the Northeast, you can get a bunch of snow, but like in Virginia, we would get snow, but it was never. It wasn't never a crazy amount, but it was very rare. Like once every, I don't know. I'm just guessing. It's crazy to think back. People talk so much about weather in the past, and they're like, this has never happened in my lifetime. And I look back at weather in my life, and I'm like, honestly, I don't know. It snowed. How often and how much? Like, I have some memory of some bigger snows here and there, but you're like, I don't know. Has the weather pattern changed, or am I just a human being and my brain is not that good? Probably that one. Probably the latter. Um, but I do remember a couple of big snows in Virginia. I remember getting snowed in when I was in college. I went to Radford University, which is like Southwest Virginia, and it's kind of up in the mountains, kind of, I think. It's not like on a mountain range, but I think it's in the New River Valley. So is it in a valley? That would make sense based on the title. I'm not sure. I probably shouldn't have brought it up because now I'm confused. Where did I go to college? Did I graduate? Who knows? I think so. I got a piece of paper that says I did, but what does that mean? That's also, you graduate college, you give a college $80,000, and they're like, here's a piece of paper that you can pay for a frame for. We're not going to give you a frame, but here's a nice piece of paper that, it's a nice card stock that costs probably about $1.45. Here you go. Thanks for the 80 grand. Here's a nice piece of paper that we printed on. College, man, it was a good time, but college nowadays is getting pretty crazy, pretty expensive. Anyways, I was at Radford University, and I think it was either my junior or senior year. I was living in an apartment at that point, and it was about to be Christmas break or like winter break or whatever. And I don't know, it was probably around December 18th, 19th, 20th, whatever it was. And my brother at the time, I must have been a senior, because I think my brother had come over from Virginia Tech, which he was a freshman at Virginia Tech, which was like 15 minutes away. He had come over. He didn't have a car at the time, so he either got a ride over, took a bus, or I don't know what he did, but he came over to Radford, and then I was going to drive us home for the holidays. And we had to delay our trip home by at least a couple days, because we got, I think it was like 18 inches of snow, which here in Denver, it's still a lot, but it's like, we'll get 18 inches a lot more often here. And then, the next day it'll be 70 degrees and it'll melt right away. But there it was like a unusually cold period. So we got like 18 inches of snow, and it was like probably 15 degrees or something. It was very cold. So it wasn't melting. So it made it tough to get out of there one time. So we were delayed a couple days. But I remember that time for a couple reasons. One, because we were delayed, obviously, in a lot of snow. But two, I think that was the first time in my life I ever took X-Lax, which, is this story I'm about to tell going to be gross? Maybe. We'll see. I'll try to keep it PG here, but had never taken X-Lax before. It's funny because I look back on that time, and I mean, obviously you take X-Lax for, probably one reason only, because you're struggling to use the bathroom. And I was very much at that point. And I look back on that time and wonder, because I got Lyme disease, obviously, in the past, which all the Lyme disease symptoms and everything didn't come to fruition until maybe 9 or 10 months after that. But part of me wonders, because a huge part of my Lyme disease symptoms was like digestive issues, not able to like use the bathroom. So part of me wonders, like, was that like the beginning of maybe some stuff was kind of boiling up before I realized, and then it just all fell apart later the next year. But yeah, I remember taking X-Lax before heading out. And if you've ever had X-Lax, it's not, you feel hungover after. I mean, it just drains. It obviously evacuates your systems, but part of that evacuation, you like become very dehydrated. You're just losing all your liquids. So I felt terrible. And yeah, you know what? That wasn't really a story worth telling. I regret that I wrote it down over here. I said, tell that X-Lax story. That'll be interesting. And then I said a couple words, and then I realized, oh, the story's finished, and there was actually nothing to the story. But I do remember, I think also while we were stuck there, I think we went and watched Avatar. I think Avatar had come out, and I remember walking, because it was me and my brother, but also some of my roommates were also stuck as well. So it was kind of a fun time where you're expecting to go, but then you're kind of like stuck in. And we all walked to the local movie theater that was, I don't know, maybe a mile or two away, and watched Avatar, which the local theater, this is one thing about small towns, and one of the reasons why I was so naive to like the prices and stuff, like just the movie theater experience as a whole. I was naive to it because I grew up in a small town. I went to the dollar theater my entire childhood. And then I go to college, and that's in a even smaller town of like, I mean, I don't know how many people, but like very small town. And they had an old theater where literally, I mean, tickets were probably, I don't even know if they were $5. They might have been $5 for like a new movie. But then they had like, it was like the old school popcorn and candy. And literally, it's like 25 cents for popcorn or whatever. And then, you move to the big city and you're like, $20 for a movie that stinks? Man, I'm gonna start sending in some reviews to AMC. Go, dear AMC, you stink. Your prices are a lot. No, I've been to a lot of movies recently. It's fine. It's inflation, whatever it is. Okay, things get more expensive. Milk. People always talk about milk. I haven't bought regular milk since college. It's probably been 15 years since I bought milk. I buy fake milk. I buy coconut milk, which funny enough isn't even milk. It's like coconut. It's like unflavored coconut drink. I think that's what it's called. It's like coconut drink. It's not coconut water. It's like a creamy consistency. I don't know. Who knows what it is? I'll look up the ingredients and figure it out. Anyways, that is a fun memory going back to watching Avatar in a snowstorm. I think my roommate lost his phone in the snow. I think he dropped it. It was like a foot and a half of snow. And he realized that he lost it. Or was it his phone? I think it was his phone. It was either his phone or maybe it was like some sort of expensive headphones or something. I can't remember because if it was his phone, I don't think it was his phone now that I say it because I think somebody called him later to be like, hey, we found this thing in the snow. Maybe it was his wallet. Anyways, I think he got it back and it was one of those where you're like, wow, that I thought for certain your wallet was gone. You just have to start a new life, just call it a loss and say, I might as well move to a new town, get a new ID, and be a different person. But I do remember that snow. The other big snow I remember was in Northern Virginia. This was 2014 or 15, 9 or 10 years ago. And I worked at the apartment complex. And it was probably 2014. Because at this time, I wasn't living at the apartment complex. Because I lived at the apartment complex for like my last 8 months of working there before I moved to Nicaragua. But they were calling for like massive amounts of snow. And even with that, like the apartment complex, they're like, hey, you have to come in. Because if there's probably going to be issues like pipes might freeze and burst and this and that. And it's like, we have to, it's just one of those jobs that stinks in the sense that like you have to be there no matter what. So what they did is they let me stay in the guest suite that they like typically would rent out to residents that had like family coming into town or whatever. You could like rent out just basically a furnished apartment so people could be close by but in a different space. And they just let me stay in there. And we ended up getting like 3 feet of snow. I remember going to work. It was maybe a couple people came down, but it was so much snow. It was like a big problem. Like literally the city and life just kind of stopped for like a week. But I do remember during that time, because a couple of the other people that worked there lived there as well. And I remember one or two of them like had a party and we all went to their apartment. And, it's when you're like locked in because snow, it is fun. You don't want it to happen all the time, obviously, but once in a blue moon, it is kind of like a funny feeling of, it like gives you the excuse to be like a kid again and be like, oh, we're locked in. And they're literally, that's the truth of it. You can't go buy groceries. You can't do anything. You're just like, oh, we're just kind of cabin fever stuck in here. Uh, so that was an interesting time. I remember, I don't know, they had a party, people were drinking. I remember, you know, I remember getting body slammed by my manager. Well, body slam might be. What happened was I was sitting on the couch, and my manager was a woman, and she she was like uh college university, like a D1 athlete, volleyball athlete. She was no joke, like 6 foot, just like a very athletic build, and she was hammered. And I'm sitting on the couch, just like it's probably like past midnight, and I'm just like tired. I'm just always tired. And I'm sitting on the couch, probably not apparently being fun enough for her or the others. And she starts jumping on me. Like she just literally keeps jumping from like a standing position into me, like body slamming, pile drive, whatever the word is, like just crushing me repeatedly. And she kept doing it. And I remember like just being like, what are you doing? It is weird. It's like, okay, I get it. There's alcohol involved. People are having a good time. But also, when you're an adult, when you're all adults and a female individual who's much larger than you is physically dominating you in that sense, it is you're like, this hurts and I don't know how to make it stop. So that was, that was pretty funny. And then, that was, I can't remember. That's all I remember from that time. Just a bunch of people in an apartment, which was also funny because it was a bunch of the people that worked there. Like, I mean, probably 5 out of the 8 people in that apartment, like, were employees of the apartment complex. And so we're all like, just it's a party that goes late into the night. And, like I said, my boss is jumping on me. There's probably just loud stomping noises and stuff. And I remember just thinking, because we would get noise complaints all the time, just for people like just regular walking noise, people would get upset about. And I remember thinking, oh, this is hilarious. We are the employees of this apartment complex who have to field noise complaints and deal with issues like this. And we're probably going to get a bunch of noise complaints about ourselves tomorrow. Or like right now, like we had a security officer that you could call if things like got out of hand under like the emergency line. So you could call it at like 2 a.m. you could call. And I remember thinking like, oh, Tim is going to stop by and be like, what in the world are y'all doing? But fortunately that didn't happen. But it is, there's the snow story, guys. Was that good? Was that better than the X-Lex story? I hope so. I'm trying. I ate a bunch of chili and then I had a bunch of chips. And then I was like, you know what? I have to record the podcast or I'm not going to do it today. And I need to do it today. And I was like, man, that is one thing. Not having coffee. I'm looking forward to when I hop back on the coffee train. Because, boy, having some coffee, then doing the pod, it puts you in a nice space to, have a little pizzazz, a little extra energy. But in other news, guys, I'll give you a quick update on how my injuries are going. Shoulders starting to feel a little better, starting to feel a lot better. Still, being careful with it, but it's been feeling good. And my knee, knock on wood, knocked on the table here. I don't know if this is real wood, is also starting to feel better as well. I ran today and yesterday. 5 miles each day. And it feels, again, knock on wood, feels pretty good. So I'm very excited to be able to finally run again. I forced myself to run this morning. I did not want to run. I got up at like 9:30. And I keep doing this, and I should get in this routine, but I've been staying up way too late playing video games and just living life, just having a good time. But I've been staying up way too late, and I've been trying to get up. The plan is, hey, let me get up at like 7 or 8 a.m., knock out a run or exercise, and then have the whole day to do stuff. But that hasn't been the case at all, given the fact that I'm staying up until 2 a.m. So hopefully we can get in that routine. But running again, the knee brace is still very much in use. It's funny. I found a new knee brace yesterday. I think it was. I was going through some just old tote of random stuff and found an old knee brace. So I have two knee braces, and it made me realize like, oh, I've dealt with some knee issues in the past. Before. It's funny because I don't know. I keep saying it's funny, and it's really not that funny. But it's been, knock on wood again, it's been a long gap between injuries, which has been nice. But you can easily forget, like, oh, yeah, I did have some nagging injuries back when I was younger, and I was like training for a half marathon, and I had to like drop out because I was dealing with some knee issues. And then I also played soccer in a soccer league for a little while. And uh, it was on like an AstroTurf field, which I mean, obviously you can get injuries on whatever field it is, but the AstroTurf was pretty harsh on the joints, it felt like. And so I dealt with some knee issues. Then I messed my ankle up during side. That was actually it was a very competitive league where I'm glad I didn't get more hurt than that. It was when I was working at the apartment complex. One of the maintenance guys played in this soccer league, and he asked me if I wanted to join. So I joined for like a season or two, and it was I think I was like 26 years old at that point, and it was a 30 and up league that allowed one sub 30-year-old, and that was me. I made the cut for the sub 30-year-old. But it was weird. It was very competitive, but it's also weird playing in a league with like people who are like 40, 50, 55, like older people who are being super competitive. And I remember like red cards were coming out pretty often. People were trying to fight each other. I was like, this is crazy. We're playing on AstroTurf. So it was because it was on AstroTurf and it was like a smaller field. It wasn't like the full length field. It's, like, I don't know what a full length field is, maybe 120 yards. I think it was like half that. So like a 60-yard field. So it was no slide tackling. It was like a no slide tackle rule. And with that said, people get competitive and then like start sliding, and then it's really easy to get injured when people are like sliding and getting aggressive on a smaller field like that. And I remember the maintenance guy who actually invited me to be on the team. He got tripped up one time. He fell over and he landed. Let's see if I can describe this. He landed with his hand was going down on the ground, and his pinky basically, I guess, landed on the ground and got stretched out. And in between his pinky and his ring finger, because of the stretching there, it split the skin. And basically, I don't know if he dislocated his pinky or what, but I remember I went to his, I probably have a picture of it on my phone. I went to the ER with him. He split his finger just totally off the side, so it was kind of dangling. And that was you hate to see it. You hate to hear a grown man squeal. And you know what? I don't say that to be funny, because if it was me, I'd do the same thing. Fortunately, knock on wood, that's a hard thing to hear and see when somebody gets really injured and you see a human being in like extreme pain and you can do nothing about it. You're like, "Oh man, if only I were a doctor that had anesthesia right now, I would help you out." But I have neither of those skills or resources. But yeah, that was a fun time. I did some fun shows this weekend. I'll hop into the shows I've got. I feel like I'm rambling a lot. Where are we at here? Okay, 34. I did some fun shows this weekend. Did a couple don't tell shows. Actually, it's been a busy week. It's been hectic with work. There's a lot of stuff going on at work. A lot of panic with the fall season, with lower sales, and just I'll spare you the details, but it's kind of it's a little intense at work right now. It's very much like we gotta we gotta make some things happen, or maybe I don't have a job. Uh, and you know what? We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Uh, and when I say maybe I won't, it's like maybe a lot of people at the company won't have a job. I don't know. The last couple of days going into the weekend were kind of a pretty big shift from previous conversations we've had, where it's like, oh my gosh, this is pretty bad. This wasn't really described until right now, so we'll see what happens. But had a stressful week, especially Thursday and Friday. And then basically, I mean, Friday, no joke, was just panic calling every opportunity I had, like in my job. We were instructed to call like a bunch of people. So I'm just calling people all day. It's very exhausting. It's very mentally taxing. And then, 5 o'clock hits. I finish the day. I make food real quick and eat. And then I have to be out the door heading to this Don't Tell show at like 5:50. And then, that goes till like 10 p.m. So it's just like a long day. And you're like, oh, man. But, I'm kind of like, man, this is a little stressful. But hopefully this show is like really fun and it won't feel like work. And it ended up being very stressful. It was the first time at this new venue. It was at a brewery. And the brewery, so the room is like very cool that the comedy was in, but it's a room that's not enclosed. It's like open to the rest of the brewery. And not only that, right beside the room where the comedy was happening, there's like a bunch of pinball machines. And I walk in there and it's like super loud. There's a ton of people there. I kind of walk through to see where the comedy is going to happen. And I see like a bunch of kids playing on the pinball machines. And I was just like, oh, dude, this isn't good. Long story short, I talked to the owners and the employees there, and it all worked out. Like we got we shut down the pinball machines, and we got the people that were there to kind of we cut the music and got people out of the way, and they closed at like 9 anyways, and we started maybe like 8:15. So it ended up being a very good show, but I was super stressed and anxious having to kind of like coordinate all that and field all that and kind of be like, hey, we got to make this change. We got to do this. And, that's all part of the job. It's fine. But just coming off of the work week, I was already like pretty exhausted. So it's just one of those where you're like, all right, a couple more hours, Ben. Just dig deep, smile on your face. So that's fine. I mean, all that said, I was pretty sorry. I just clapped underneath the table. I didn't mean to do that. All that said, I was the show was very good. Like it was a very fun show. The crowd was great. Saturday did another Don't Tell It. New venue to me. I think it's the second time that they've done it. It's like a speakeasy, and this place, the room was awesome. Very cool room. Crowd, not awesome. The crowd was pretty lame. It was just one of those. I mean, this happens all the time, but it was a sold out space and just a tight crowd. Just a bunch of people, and it's hard to tell. I think it's like I think they all enjoyed it, but it's hard to tell if were they having a good time but kind of polite laughers and not really outwardly making noise, or B, were they not enjoying it. I think most of them were enjoying it and just didn't laugh. Like, they were a little bit older crowd, a little bit probably wealthier, the area that we were in. Probably a little wealthier than, sometimes you get like a 20s to 30-year-old young professional or just, somebody looking for fun, date night. This was a lot of older folks that it's hard to tell sometimes. Older folks, it's like, I've done shows for a bunch of older crowds, and sometimes they just don't like it. Like they genuinely are not impressed and upset. And a lot of times they're having a great time. They just don't laugh super loud. And you think that you're bombing, and then they come up later and they're like, that was awesome. That was great. So it was hard to tell. It was a very cool venue in space. Uh, but we'll have to see. I'm sure I'll probably do more there, and we'll have to see if the crowd is similar moving forward. But I got a bunch of fun shows coming up this week. I guess when this comes out, I'm doing Interrogation. It's like a true crime storytelling comedy show at Comedy Works South on Wednesday. I think that's November 6th. November 7th, I'm doing a show at 222 Brew, hosted by Sam Elvison. Good bud, good guy, good comic. And then Friday, doing a Don't Tell. Saturday, hosting a rotating tap show at Barquentine Brewing. And then the rest of the month, I got a bunch of stuff too. Like I said, check out my link tree, which is in the bio of my Instagram. I haven't updated that. I usually say that to force myself to update it immediately. And I said it last week on the podcast, and I did not have time. Well, it wasn't that I didn't have time. I just didn't update it. But what can you do? What has been bothering me, you ask? That's I wrote down something to chat about that's been bothering me. Usually I'm bothered by a lot of stuff nowadays, which is obnoxious. You truly grow into just being a grumpy man when you're a guy. I feel like that's just the destiny of most males. The older you get, the more tired you get, and the more grumpy you get for no reason. It's not for no reason, though. The reason what happened is I got a email from Xfinity, my internet supplier, and they were like, we noticed that your modem isn't capable of processing the speeds that you pay for. Here's a list of modems that we would recommend getting. And long story short, it really bothered me because I already talked to Xfinity. I talked about it, a couple weeks ago on the podcast, how obnoxious it was being on the phone. They were running diagnostics and stuff, trying to get me set up. And it's like, why didn't you tell me at that point? That would have been nice. Let me know when you did the thing with it. Because also they deferred me to Netgear, which is the company, the brand of the modem that I have. And I called them and they charged me like $50 to walk me through resetting the thing, which was obnoxious. So now it's like, oh, well, now it's not even working. It's still working, but I think I pay for like 300 megabyte download. And I did a speed test on my internet, just to see how much I'm getting. And it said like 27 megabytes. So it's like, oh, I'm getting 10% of what I'm paying for. That's stupid. Because also it's like, okay, I get maybe this thing can't handle 300 megabytes, but I looked it up and it's supposed to be able to handle up to 200 megabytes. So it's like the fact that it's only handling 27, I was like, yo, who is in charge of technology? Because I need to fight them. I need to fight Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and say, why? I know you don't have anything to do with Netgear, but why do you make me hate you so much? Can you explain that? So I was looking up at all the modems are like $200+, which I've told you guys how much I've been spending on Amazon, and I'm like, all right, I'm through the buying spree, but apparently I'm not through the buying spree. Hopefully this is the last thing. We'll see if I probably should get one, but I haven't pulled the trigger yet. I'm like, I'm just spending way too much. But that bothered me quite a bit. I will say one thing that's been positive. A lot of things have been positive this last week, but I finally finished that book, guys. Finished Travels with Charlie in Search of America, or whatever that John Steinbeck book was. Not great. I mean, look, I'm a big fan of John Steinbeck and his like good novels, East of Eden, Of Mice and Men. I've read. He's definitely the author I've read the most books from, but there's a pretty big gap between his good books and his not so good books. But it was basically just it was him retelling his tales of traveling in a camper, basically from New York to California and back, and just his interactions with folks along the way. And it was just kind of whatever. Would I recommend reading it? No. It was, and I mean, I read it because I bought a bunch of John Steinbeck books and I was like, I'm gonna make it through this. But it wasn't great. But now, let me tell you what, I was actually unpacking some old books that I had because I bought a bookshelf and I was putting the old books on the bookshelf. And as I was doing that, I was kind of, obviously grabbing certain books that I've read in the past and reliving a bit of going down memory lane as far as like, oh, I remember the time that I read this and how I like really enjoyed it. And it made me feel really good and excited to read and this and that. And so I saw some books like that and it inspired me to buy some more sci-fi books kind of in the genre of the books that I saw that had got me excited. And so I'm currently reading, I bought a couple books and I'm currently reading a book called Children of Time by Adrian something. Sounds like a Russian author or something, or Russian ethnicity. And it's a sci-fi space, whatever book. It's been good. I've read like 100 pages. It's been very interesting. It's a pretty long book. It's like 600 pages, but I'm very excited to get through that and read that. I've got a couple others that I ordered as well. So again, I asked last podcast, or 2 podcasts ago, I said, hey, recommend some books for me, guys. And nobody did. So I'll ask again. Actually, you know what it is? Probably nobody listened to the end of the podcast. That's probably what it is. I'll ask first. I'll ask at the beginning next podcast. But if you do have book recs, let me know. Leave a comment. Other than that, I think we're pretty much at time, but I'll end on a couple things here as far as jokes I'm working on. I'm finally starting to try to write again, trying to get through some new material and really hold my foot to the fire, make it happen. And I wrote a little bit yesterday, wrote a little bit about mouth tape. I've been wearing mouth tape at night to tape my mouth shut to force myself to breathe through my nose, which is apparently supposed to be healthier for you. And just writing a little bit about that. I feel pretty good, about just how it's kind of funny to like tape your mouth shut before bed. It's kind of a scary, weird thing where you're like, is this actually going to be healthy, or is this really stupid of me to do this? And then just my experience with it I've done it for off and on for the last year probably. But working on that, also got some other, jokes that I need to work out. Need to work on some jokes about. I have some jokes in the past that I've written about coffee, and now try to maybe combine that with like cutting out coffee and my experience with that. These are, a lot of times I'll tell you guys joke premises and then kind of it'll be story-esque and I'll kind of go into the story a little bit. I'm realizing, I don't know, has this podcast been interesting at all? I feel like I've spoken more fluently, but I don't know if there's been any interesting things coming out of my mouth. Let me know. So working on a couple jokes there. Let me know. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the pod. Appreciate you guys listening. I'm going to end it there. But thanks so much. Again, if you have a book rec, let me know. If not, let me know a good movie. Give me a recommendation of some kind. Other than that, I'll end it there. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you again next week.